Welcome back to the LCS Challengers League. I'm Mazel. I'm joined by Gabby, and we've also got Joshi there, I guess, joining us. I love it because I can.
You said this because of the arrow clip, right?
I get to break Joshi every single time we come into intros. I love it. I just get to hear him break down. Anyways, we do have our next series coming up to bat. It is Evil Geniuses Challengers over there versus Supernova, and it's an interesting one to boot. I feel like Evil Geniuses, while maybe not in the highest point of the standings, they themselves have been a very curious squad to watch, right? It's an Evil Geniuses that we were saying, oh, we finally get what we were promised. Well, things have also changed again and again, Joshi, and we see them trying to put things together and make that puzzle work.
Yeah, I am actually super hyped for this series, right? It was a series that we already knew was going to have a lot of impact over which one of these teams might not make it to the playoffs at the end. But now that we've also seen Team Fish Taco pick up a win here over Wildcard, we are adding another horse to that race. Both these teams are so close to trying to find their way into the postseason.
Yeah, they truly are. I think especially when you see the backbone this team is built off of, when you had Shaden and Ryoma there as well as Smoothie, but then you finally got King in after such a long-awaited time. Surdy joining, replacing Soul, coming in, trying to be a little bit more of a carry top laner. On the other side, you've had incredible solo performances from a majority of members, right? We've had Music, who was making waves coming in for Supernova early on in the split, but specifically Quacker has had multiple Plays of the Week nominations so far, Gabby.
Yeah, it's been fun watching Quacker just do his thing in the top lane. We even got to hear from him in an interview last week. Some good Olaf. We've got a little bit of the Darius, which is just 1-1 in terms of record, but for those that have been tracking,
cool.
Yeah.
It looks cool.
It looks cool, and when you know about Quacker's history, you have to get excited when the Darius gets locked in. But I think that Supernova have shown up with some clear points of power to play through, not just specifically in terms of carry, but also in terms of shot calling. I mean, Trevor has been noted as a leader in game, and now bringing that to a different squad.
It's actually been really cool to watch, and also to see the fluctuations on the other side where he came from on Fear.
Yeah.
But specifically, when you look at a lot of the kind of shot calling nature of this, but specifically some of the come-ups we've seen from Robbie Bob as well in the mid lane, that cohesion from Trevor with the rest of the squad is oh so important. And speaking of cohesion, we did get to chat with a few members of the Evil Geniuses squad. So first up and foremost, we got Smoothie. Let's hear what he had to say.
I mean, we literally took a 3v5 at Herald fight and we just got triple killed, and it was like, okay, we're losing our minds, guys. We gotta chill out a little bit. I think today everyone kind of focused up. We had a big talk after yesterday's games, and yeah, it was productive. I think everybody like kind of stepped up today, and even though we made mistakes, we made the mistakes together, you know, and that's just how it is. We're not one person's doing one thing and the other person's doing another thing. This is not how the game works, right? We are going to, I think we're going to make a deep run in playoffs as long as we don't lose our mentals during our matches and start, you know, team fighting better, getting better cohesion, and figuring out how our shot calling works, because we do have a lot of voices on this team. And yeah, like some players talk a lot more during the matches too, so we got to figure that out as well.
Yeah, we've definitely heard from both of these players over the course of the split, in particular about how there's not necessarily an easy way for them to have this no person, for them to have the very overarching, like, here's our game plan. It's really been hurting them quite a bit over the past couple of games. Now, I mean, they had a couple of big talks. You heard Smoothie talk about how going in for a 3v5 at the Riftfield might not be the play, and it should put some better systems in place for them to actually make some of these plays. But we also had an opportunity to talk to King about how much pressure he feels as though his team has been under during a lot of these games.
We're not getting outplayed. Like, I'm sure, like that. Like, unless they got mic profiles, I don't think anyone's outplaying us. Like, yeah, stuff like that. Like, I feel like 2 of the games on the weekend were 100% outs. Like, they were 100% out wins, but we just lost our minds. I think we have a lot of pressure on ourselves. Everyone feels pressured to do something, and like if we just calm down and realize, like, just play slow. Losses aren't as big as they seem to be. You know, I feel like a lot of our mistakes come from, like, we fell behind, so we need to get everything back.
And you get to hear a little bit of that introspection as well, and hear, you know, maybe making things out to be a bit bigger than they are, but specifically things are a bit big coming into these last 2 weeks, because you've got to try to make playoffs. This roster, all these names, there's no way that it is not a failure if they cannot make it into that top 8. So it's specifically very nice to see a lot of that introspection, because it shows that growth that we love in an ACL. But on the other side, we've seen a lot of growth, and it has been a very interesting ride for Supernova. Pegged at the beginning of the split as one of our bottom teams who will end the split at the bottom, they are struggling now, but they've seen a lot of come-ups from individual performances, and one I love to highlight here is Robbie Bob. While it's short and sweet, I think he has been able to leapfrog off of that collegiate championship into a solidified role here on Supernova, Joshi.
And I definitely feel as though Robbie Bob has been a player who did not look good during his time for Evil Geniuses previously, partly because he was consistently asked to play champions that he's not as familiar with. And when he started playing a really supportive role, you know, he made some other players on this field look really strong, but now he's kind of coming into his own. He's going back to things that we know he has had success on in the past. And that familiarity for a player like Robbie coming up from collegiate has been a huge part of his success so far.
And you'll see here the double bomb combo goes through. Yes, he does die in the end, but you love the instinct to go for the kill. And these are kinds of things that you really need to see them take out against Evil Geniuses Challengers today, because it will be a tough task. And I think a very aggressive stance from Evil Geniuses could upend a lot of that plan making from Supernova, Gabby.
Yeah, Evil Geniuses are coming off of their match against Maryville, where they dished them a couple of L's, you know, a team that had been previously splitting a lot of their results. And with Evil Geniuses and Supernova being right next to each other in the standings, they drew in the first time they faced off in the first round robin. They are on that borderline to be able to get into playoffs. This is kind of that do or die last couple weeks, right? So I'm very curious to see how they end up approaching this game.
I am as well. We're about to find out, though, as we have draft number 1 for our final series here ready to go. So let's see what happens.
All right. Game 1. Getting into draft, Joshi. Are there any major standouts and expectations that you expect to see in terms of draft from these squads?
Honestly, both of these squads are fairly standard in terms of their drafting, right? We don't see a lot of characters coming out from either side that is super out of the meta. The big thing that we will look at, though, is that Quacker does have the counter pick here going into Sturdy, and while Sturdy has a couple of picks that he is known for and the self-proclaimed best Camille in North America, he's going up against Quacker, who really has thrived in situations where he has had counter pick. We saw that when he was going up against Zamudo, when both of them got really hard counters. Zamudo looked decent. Quacker absolutely carried the game. This might be an opportunity for Supernova to take over this one as well.
That individual pop-off going a long way in some of Supernova's victories, but I'm sure that Evil Geniuses are looking to bring something together here in the end, because one thing that we talked about a bit in leading into this matchup are the names on some of these rosters. I've been tracking King for a while. All right, King kind of came over when there was that influx of Oceania players that came when all the regions came together, and then on Cloud9 had built up a strong identity, a lot of flexibility in the bot lane, willing to bring the mages, willing to be the hyper carry, and then these unique situations of not always getting the same playtime despite being a really strong player, and then of course visa issues and the like. So I want to see him be able to really thrive as a carry for Evil Geniuses, and in their victories you see that.
Woo, that's bold too, coming out immediately. The Jay's first pick coming through. This has typically been a character that Surdy has really enjoyed. He's very convinced in his ability to go into the laning phase, but this is also the character that Quacker got to play Olaf into last time, and it feels as though Supernova is already being dared to pick up one of these characters for Quacker, with a bit of an opportunity for Evil Geniuses to flex it around a little bit. It's not as though Ryoma can't play this character, but if you can give Jace 2 bad matchups, it doesn't matter which one of them plays it if it's just going to get run over either way.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Evil Geniuses shaking things up a little bit with the start of their draft. For Supernova, though, you've got the Azir locked in for Robbie Bob. Always somebody with which you're going to see paired with many mid laners, and then Ryoma is also somebody who favors the pick, so as you're just going over to the Supernova side, you got the Sejuani, and Evil Geniuses look like they might be answering with a jungler of their own. Of course, we have seen some of the flexibility of Sejuani into the solo lanes as well, but still tends to be prioritized in that jungle position.
Yeah, and as we do have Shaden going over towards the Maokai, this has been an interesting look for Evil Geniuses. When Shaden is playing a bit more of a utility role and helping out Ryoma in particular, this was how Evil Geniuses had a lot of success going into Spring. But now they also have this Jace coming through. Whatever lane you go towards, Shaden, when paired with either Surdy or Ryoma, should be able to dominate whichever lane they are moving towards. And while Supernova does have the Sejuani to be good at starting fights, it's not necessarily going to have the same ability to go for these counter ganks to shut down Maokai because of the upfront burst that either lane will have for Evil Geniuses.
And the Xayah now followed up, locked in for King in the bot lane.
Yeah.
We've seen that
Last
pick
chance for
banned
Olaf.
away. Yeah, last Olaf opportunity, but Supernova, we'll see what direction that they end up going. I think for Evil Geniuses, Ryoma and Surdy have both played the Jace. Obviously, Surdy, we were just talking about Jace being a very popular pick from in the past, but kind of this later addition to this split has yet to play the pick. But for Supernova, they took the opportunity to grab the Olaf.
This feels like a trap that Evil Geniuses has laid, right? This is the kind of thing they open with the Jace. It's like, and I set this other card off to the side in defense position, right? Not knowing exactly what it is. Now, the thing is about Jace into Olaf, it is terrible. Like, it is so hard to actually play this matchup out. You're getting out-sustained, you're getting out-traded, and every single time you go in for a fight, the Olaf just goes, wow, thanks for coming in, here's some axes. And now, you take the Olaf, you take the Jace, you put it into the mid lane going into Azir, and that is an okay matchup for the Jace. But what does Surdy want to play in the Olaf? It's not as though there are a ton of things in the meta that Olaf really struggles into, and we are seeing that Supernova, they have some opportunities to try and ban out some of the baits coming through. So I'm really curious how this trap is actually going to be springing. We heard what Lunasi was saying, spoiling scrims a little bit of what his opponents was playing in the past. Surdy's not the same kind of player who just has this ocean of champions that they can pick.
Yeah, and I think that Supernova are trying to index into that, saying we know that you ended up locking the Jason because of that flexibility, so trying to hide some of your cards, but where do we think that the pick is going to end up going? But I do want to know if Evil Geniuses were setting this plan up all along in terms of the bans to come through. Supernova still making sure to cover all their bases, though. They take away the Jax. They want to remove the Rakan as a pairing with the Xayah in the bot lane for Smoothie, who, as many supports has been favoring the pick. But we'll see what ends up looking like. Varus, also a pick that was touched on 1313, but more specifically for a type of build than it was to take him out of the meta entirely. Still has great lockdown with the Chain of Corruption and a lot of poke to offer. So not a tool that Supernova will be able to bring.
Sketch does go for the Jinx, so they have a lot of damage, and they have the tools to actually burst out the first player so that Sketch can get that reset and start taking over some of these fights. I really like the draft coming out from Supernova. It's all going to depend on how Evil Geniuses will pivot. If they try and go for an extreme range composition, that could help them out, but instead, it looks like they are just willing to go in for some of these brawls. And now we get to find out where the Jace is going, right? Where is this character going to go? Is it going to be going into the Olaf into the top lane? Is it going to go into the Azir in the mid lane? It is going to be that little bit of a trap, but this isn't as though it's some like, aha, we have defeated you by picking our one champion and we win the lane and the game. This is more of an opportunity for Surdy to kind of strangle Olaf out of the game. If he can just shut down Quacker, he has been the major vehicle for Supernova in actually getting some of these wins, and will instead put a lot more pressure on Robbie Bob and Sketch to find their own damage in these fights.
Yeah, and this is asking a decent amount of Surdy, who has offered a lot to Evil Geniuses in the team fight, which obviously, we can see have quite an impact with the Kennen, but what can we see from lane from Surdy to be able to keep some oppression onto Supernova? Well, what do you make, Joshi, of these drafts overall? Nas locked in. You got some early objective control from the Maokai for Evil Geniuses, decent engage, but some hyper carry action with Jinx on the opposition.
Yeah, I mean, I like the draft coming out from Supernova. It feels like it's kind of done everything that they need to, right? You have lots of damage, you have some upper burst, you have age tools, you have safety for your own backline. Evil Geniuses, on the other hand, is now putting a lot of pressure on their solo laners to have strong laning phases. And Gabby, stats don't tell you everything, right? But I want you to guess what the win rate in solo queue and Platinum Plus on 13-13 is for Olaf into Kennen in the top lane.
Why you make me say numbers, Joshi?
You know, it's somewhere between 0 and 100.
I'm gonna say 43.
Ooh, wrong direction. It's 59.5% win rate for Olaf, right? This was a matchup where in competitive play, it is a little bit more equitable for the Kennen, but in solo queue, we have seen that our players have not necessarily figured out how to do this. And I'm a little bit surprised, right? Because it's not as though it is now suddenly a free lane, right? This doesn't feel as though the trap has been fully sprung. And Evil Geniuses in the mid lane, Jace does a good job if you can play into the Azir in the first couple of levels. If you can put the bird on the back foot, it's going to look really good for Ryoma. But in the top side, now Sturdy doesn't get to all-in Quacker until level 6, and even then, he's mostly trying to suffocate him, and that's a really tough thing to do up against the Olaf. Supernova have really given both their solo laners opportunities to take over the game.
Yeah, they sure have. And see if Quacker can make use of this Ghost Champ. We know that he very much prefers those type of picks between the Olaf, the Darius, and they're just a lot of fun to play over in that top side. Of course, it means you don't have somebody that can teleport elsewhere, but you do have somebody that can run up on someone like Ryoma, who then has to flash over the wall to get away. And now as Jace is absent, that summoner here to kick off the laning phase.
Oh no, that's horrible. Losing the flash in this lane and going into lane with a huge gap in your HP suddenly means that Robbie Bob can be really aggressive. And I know Ryoma has already been a player that we have been fairly critical of this split. We know that Ryoma has consistently been a player where his team has made it rather deep in the postseason and in playoffs for the Academy and Challengers ecosystem, but honestly, he hasn't been playing all that well, and it kind of goes back to what Keem was talking about. They feel as though they're under a ton of pressure all the time. They try and go really aggressive, and to use his words, lose their mind every single time that these later game fights happen, where they go really far forward because they feel like everyone on their team has to make a play.
It's a lot of pressure to be working with when everyone feels like they gotta be the playmaker. Sometimes it can work out as long as you can make something come of it. Smoothie just gonna go ahead and get some early clearing out of the wards over here on the bot side. Try to keep eyes on any potential rotations from Music. Some heavy push in from Trevor and Sketch, just being able to clear the wave pretty effectively. And a slight lead for the Jinx side, but even across mid and top right now in terms of CS.
And Gabby, I want to put even more pressure on this matchup today than what we've already talked about, right? We've already said that both these teams are currently riding the border of whether or not they will make it into playoffs. Both teams, including this match, have 6 more 2-game series left to play in the regular season. And after this, both teams have to play all 5 members of the top half of the standings currently. Right, Supernova will have to play up against Cincinnati Fear, Team Liquid, FlyQuest, Disguised, and AoE. That's a really tough end of the split. Whereas on the other hand, Evil Geniuses are also playing up against FlyQuest, Wildcard, Team Liquid, and Disguised, and the only team in the bottom half that they still have to play up is Team Fish Taco. This is potentially one of the last times that we should be expecting either of these rosters to pick up more wins as we start looking towards the end of the split, and it creates a ton of pressure on both rosters because every win that they can pick here matters so much.
You're absolutely right, Joshi. I mean, obviously, as a team, you want to go into every match with this belief we can win this as long as we play the game that we intend to play. But you do have to consider strength of schedule. And when looking at it from this zoomed out objective perspective, it's a lower likelihood for them to be able to garner a ton of wins against the top teams, and it does help you in at least having the confidence in being able to do so if you can get the win against a team that is equal with you in the standings, the one that you are supposed to trump to be able to get into that playoff position. So EG and Supernova coming into this matchup with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and the last chances to be able to get themselves into that bracket. But all the while, though.
All the while. I mean, we have seen Sturdy doing a good job in trying to suffocate Quacker out of the top side of the map, right? He has built up a 2-wave advantage, probably after Quacker cleans up all these minions underneath his own turret. And also now that they have these sword shoots, it's going to be super difficult for Quacker to get on top and stay on top of any of these fights. So we got to turn our attention a little bit towards bottom half of the map, and they just go.
Oh, Smoothie going for it. Sketch, flash, and heal away. Shaden from the back, the lane.
No!
First blood was drawn by Sketch. Right here, the attempt of a play from Evil Geniuses on the bot side gone wrong.
A disaster coming through. Shaden trying to take a play out of the playbook of Tomio, flashing over the wall, going for the plays. They already got the flash out of Sketch, but I mean, he ends up getting the reset as they're under turret.
Yeah, Smooth wants to happen again, but does manage to get the trade back. So King following up a good hit from the Q from Smoothie and good follow-up engage. At least they're able to draw one back.
Yeah, that is really big here for King. King has been one of the few players on Evil Geniuses that we still have held in high regard based on what we have seen from them on stage. He's consistently been one of the big carries, and one of our criticisms that we have had of Evil Geniuses in the past is a lack of willingness to play around this player. They try and make it happen. Shaden unfortunately doesn't get an assist, but it still ends up in a situation where King does have this kill, gets the blue buff, and denies some waves from Sketch as well. Evil Geniuses now have a real point of power to play around in King. I gotta say, Gab, he's gonna have a problem in getting outranged a lot this game, right? You see that the Jinx and the Azir are both here, and they can just fire away whenever King tries to walk up.
Yep, and some of their tools becoming more readily available too. The Emperor's Divide available for Robbie Bob just now hitting level 7. So even if you can't quite get in range, you can try and draw someone into your range. That's for sure. And then meanwhile on the top side, you know, Surdy and Quacker have been going at it. That lead for Surdy slightly extended means up in gold as well as XP. And some of that vamp brought through by Quacker, so that sustainability continuing to rise. Someone that's looking to be unkillable later on when in times of Ragnarok and beyond. But nonetheless, we'll have to see how this bot lane continues to fare because, yes, King and Sketch, we're looking at these as major damage outputters for these teams in the team fight. And getting a kill into each is one way to get their builds to start to get online.
I want to go back to that Surdy discussion and the Quacker, right? In that matchup, it is a spot where Surdy has done a pretty decent job at suffocating out his opponent for most of the early laning phase, but Quacker now with the Vampiric Scepter can try and trade much more aggressively because he will be sustaining off these fights in ways that his opponent will not. And so Evil Geniuses, as they're starting to create pressure on the other side of the map, King and Smoothie with their priority is going to allow Shaden to start up the Dragon. And with all that in mind, I am starting to look at where Surdy can find his way into the fights, because if Supernova are going to be consistently just building up a lot of armor on their side of the map, and they can do that on both Quacker and on Music, they can rely on Robbie Bob to just use his Emperor's Divide to make sure that Surdy's ultimate is never particularly relevant in these fights. They don't necessarily need to worry about the magic damage that he can do, even if he has this small lead.
You get a lot of value if you can draw some of these ultimates out.
Yeah.
From the side of Evil Geniuses. Rift Herald, though.
Oh.
Just now finished off and left to go walking.
Wait, that walks mid lane? That's crazy. I thought for sure that it was going to walk top lane, but
she was facing top lane at first, and then now crash towards mid. Brian was saying, wait, what's happening here? Where did Shelly come from? So a couple plates over to Robbie Bob.
No, Robbie Bob got none of it. That was all going over to Music.
Oh,
we go to bot
Music
lane.
was over but down on the bot side, Shaden. Double root here with the Nature's Grasp in with the Twisted Advance, and Sketch falling to King. And to use the Ghost to get in range.
I mean, still, really good stuff. We are giving more gold to the player that we have been asking for more play around for Evil Geniuses, right? Another kill goes over to King. He has the opportunity to continue hitting away at this turret for potential more plays. But Evil Geniuses still looking for these big opportunities, and we gotta admit, I know what Music was doing. There is a window whereby you can, as you're like picking up the Rift Herald, you can use your sweeper. I think he double tapped it, right? And suddenly, once you've already picked it up, it just starts channeling. But it's a cool, like, little trick that can allow you to sweep out an extra ward or two at no cost. Now Supernova for Ryoma.
Emperor's Divide does throw Ryoma into the clutches of music. Flash again. Robbie Bob has fallen. Ryoma under 100 HP, but Swag walks it out. There's a rocket coming downtown. Sketch did throw that from bot lane, but it did not connect.
This is the longest Emperor's Divide I think I've ever seen. The way it still catches Ryoma here, Robbie Bob picks it up, and then immediately as a hammering blow comes through, I think for sure Ryoma is going to go down, but a good flash from Robbie buys them some time. But again, at the end, just barely not having enough damage. There was part of King's interview who said, people are not outplaying us. It's just us losing our minds later on. When Evil Geniuses are responding to plays from Supernova, they've looked good.
So Shaden came to make the play with 30 on the top side. Slicing Maelstrom activated, and despite the Ragnarok, Quacker goes down. Nature's Grass thrown out by Shaden. Does manage to follow up with the root. Got the Ignite here to be able to finish it off. Evil Geniuses making a play on the top side. Robbie Bob cannot stand up to them.
And also on the bottom side, we didn't get to see it, but there was a 2v2 kill coming through for King and Smoothie. They take down Sketch yet again. This game is getting run away with, and Smoothie, you can see this dive here. Good wave coming through, guaranteeing all of the crowd control, and King, as he goes through, there's no way that anyone in Evil Geniuses go down here. A fantastic dive coming out from the bottom lane of Evil Geniuses, and on the top side as well. I mean, just shutting down Quacker. They have done such a good job across the map and making sure that nobody on Supernova is going to have any gold this game.
Great way of capitalizing upon the lead of Surdy on top side, and that shows why it's so important later on as they get in the team fights. If we're looking at what happened bot, to be able to get that Featherstorm 2 out kind of defensively from King at the start of fights, because whenever he's able to hold on to it, whether in the 2v2 or the 5v5 later, that is an aggressive tool that can be enough to be able to finish somebody off. So meanwhile, speaking of aggression, Quacker still venturing forward onto Surdy up top. He does lose half of his HP, but we talked about all the vamp that he's working in this build.
Yeah, red buff for Surdy will neutralize a lot of the pressure for now, and so Evil Geniuses can turn their attention to the bottom half of the map. Music has been waiting down here for quite a while, looking for an overextension, and it might be Smoothie will end up walking into the bush.
Smoothie is trying his best to get the good angle to peek in there without taking too much damage. Reverses the stun, but the Glacial Prison thrown out onto Smoothie eats most of the damage. And King, the autos aren't enough to finish off Sketch, but Shaden and Ryoma are coming from Riverside. Nature's Grass thrown will get all of the roots possible. Breath of Life, very effective from Trevor, though, to make sure they're not locked down for long.
I mean, good escape coming through from Supernova. You got to start looking for these plays in order to get gold back on your fed carries. Sketch does get that first one off of there, but it doesn't necessarily bring them a whole lot closer in terms of their play across the map. Just getting the one kill still doesn't alleviate the problems that they are having across the map. We do see that Music, having already completed the Radiant Virtue, will help out his team in terms of staying alive in these fights, but that's not really what they're looking for, right? They need to have the damage to take down King. They need to be able to burst out Surdy or knock him away during these fights, and that still relies on a lot of individual play coming up inside of Supernova.
Yeah, and in terms of individual power, both of the bot laners have their Kraken Slayer completed, but you can see that bouncy on King's Head currently because of some of it from the 2v2, some of it from Shaden, really making some plays across, whether it is facilitating Surdy on the top side or securing these bot plays to be able to pick up the second dragon of the game, stacking those up, denying opportunities from Supernova, who were really only able to get that first Rift Herald that just put a couple plates into the jungler's pocket, but nothing more yet. I know feels like they really wanted to punish Ryoma more early on, but when the play didn't quite go in their favor, haven't really been able to find a way to make a return and punish that lack of flash that will be up not too much longer.
As I start looking, right, Music forced away from the blue buff as well. This is going to be a tough one, right? But this is one of the things that Evil Geniuses themselves have said that they have had a lot of trouble with, is slowing down and not feeling like they need to do something every single time. Again, they feel as though they're not being outplayed. They're just not playing the macro game, right? And it's not even that they're playing it wrong, it's just that they're not playing it. And here we go, a 4v4 around the Herald. Supernova trying to find their way in.
One control in the pit by Supernova. Music the first to show his face at him. Jaden responding with the ultimate. Teleport coming in from Supernova. Chomper's thrown down. We'll get some zone off. A Smoothie goes in the back line with the Magnet Storm. Multiple members of Supernova already drawn low. And even though Shaden is exhausted, he can still create the space for Evil Geniuses to follow up with more and more kills. Robbie Bob just sent a pack in towards top. 4 taken down. Lives reaped by EG.
And we saw on the other side of the fight, Surdy just solo kills Quacker as well. Evil Geniuses blowing this game wide on open. We don't get outplayed. We're just making sure we take everything down. This might be the cleanest game from Evil Geniuses we have seen this entire split, as they have been playing a clinical fashion, going for fantastic dives in the bottom lane, controlling the top side of the map, even their draft. I was skeptical of it, but the way that we have seen Surdy in particular just take control of the top half has been fantastic. As we take another look at this fight, you see that Shaden goes right around Music. It's like, yeah, I don't care about that guy. I just gotta hit this Sketch guy. We just gotta make sure he goes down in the Q flash at the end. Make sure that Sketch has nowhere left to go. Another thing I want to point out, right? Quacker had an opportunity to potentially be aggressive, ends up just getting soloed out on the side.
Oh, Robbie Bob tried to connect with the Emperor's Divide. Surdy gets the last hit. Super Mega Death Rocket comes but hits a very, very healthy Rel. So nothing to be had of it. 7,000 gold lead for Evil Geniuses now. And look at the way they were able to clear that mid lane. That inhibitor turret already weakened.
Already weakened. So much pressure coming through as well. And you can see after the 10-minute mark, it's just been all Evil Geniuses the entire time. The dips have been tiny across the board. They're up 2 dragons. They've gotten a 7,000 gold lead. Evil Geniuses, now the only question is going to be, can they continue to close this one out? The later this game goes, the easier it becomes for Robbie Bob and Sketch to start taking over, when they can use their range advantage to try and come back and go for fights. We're a long way away from that one, right? We are definitely seeing the Evil Geniuses in total control. They should be able to win on the sides as well. Ryoma, uncontestable by Robbie Bob. On the other side of the map, because of the lead that Surdy has built, super tough for Quacker to go for these fights until he's got a Radiant Bridge completed.
And Quacker now a bit unlocked from that top lane, though. Going to be over on bot while Robbie Bob continues to try and hold against that wave pushing against him in top side. But this is what you want to see from Evil Geniuses, who are one of those teams where a classic case of have been able to find some success in scrims, but can't quite translate it. Sometimes that happens too when you have some shifting in your roster a bit later than everyone else. So what's going to get them on the same page? Is it improving communication? Is it individual play? What is it to bring them to that next level? And then following up a 2-0 against MU. And then now kicking off pretty strongly in this game here against their direct opposition in the standings, they can hopefully start to identify what is working for them. And it's taking advantage of, you know, the pressure that Surdy was asserting over on top.
Yeah.
It's making sure that King is able to get some gold to be that carry later on, especially when you know that Sketch is working to do the same. And between those two on the side of Evil Geniuses, they've been able to make a lot happen. You can see all the bounties across multiple members. A stun up though here, trying to take away from what King has to offer throughout the Feather Storm already. Shut down by Sketch, so one of those bounties ripped away. But Robbie Bob has been alone on top side for far too long. Evil Geniuses respond to the pressure on mid by making a play on the pick on top and trying to make sure that this gold lead for them maintains its pretty significant size.
Now, we did ask King what his most embarrassing moment in all of his pro career has been. That might be on the list, as now Sketch tried to get run down.
Far downtown play from Shaden here to get the lock, and Trevor now no Breath of Life. No heal from Sketch before as well, so Evil Geniuses right now with the Dragon having spawned wanted to get rid of some of the tools that Supernova have to be able to step up to it. You do still have to worry about the Shock Blast that Ryoma can dish out and kind of the poking over the wall, so EG can step up to their 3rd Drake of the game to put them on soul points.
This, again, I want to go back and praise Evil Geniuses a second time for their play in this game. It has been so far, with a couple of small exceptions, their most clinical game so far this entire split. They continuously have been moving together as a group, making sure that people are not getting caught out. Of course, King, you know, flashing in the wrong direction in that last fight. A notable exception to the things that have happened from this roster. But the way that they are controlling these fights and the way that they don't feel as though they need to go aggressive to jump into the back line in order to try and take some of these fights has been making them look a whole lot cleaner. We knew going into this split that this team had the individual talent to be good. We've just been asking, where has been the evil geniuses that was promised? This is the closest we've got.
Yeah, it's a good team on paper, and I think that that's why people look at them pretty critically when trying to bring this roster together in a way that can make a run in playoffs, and starting to see those moments come into fruition when they're making clinic work of this matchup against Supernova right now. Doing those Maokai things by getting deep into the jungle, throwing down the saplings, really assisting in this ward acquisition from Smoothie and the like, and now this top side is where Ryoma and Shaden just want to keep Robbie Bob locked, who hasn't really been able to do much in these fights. Has to teleport to be able to join them, but feels like they break out in separate corridors.
Yeah. Oh, and now we're having to use that Super Mega Death Rocket just to check if the Baron is being done. It's like, well, it wasn't at the time.
But now... And Smoothie trying to zone off. Quacker the first to find him, running on in, but Smoothie hits him with the Q. Supernova still on the outskirts of the pit. Surdy standing on by, does have flash, does have slicing Maelstrom. Many flashes available at back. Vosh used to get into the pit. Music follows over the wall, but rooted on the entry. A decent amount of damage onto Shaden, but still stays alive to secure this Turo Baron buff for Evil Geniuses. They'll have 5 Dawning Purple and looking to extend what has been a domination from them in this first 20 minutes.
Yeah, still 5 people of Evil Geniuses with the Turo Baron buff. As they start looking around, they are not going for a reset. This is a catch on Quacker.
Yeah,
Ghost.
Quacker. Ghost away into the cove. Shot blast tags him. Now with Ragnarok popped, seeing if he can lock on to Shaden, who is taking a decent amount of damage. Swings away with the Reckless Swing. Ryoma able to finish him though. That Super Mega Death Rocket almost took him down as well. Good attempt by Sketch, but in the end, a bit of a prolonged skirmish there on the top side of Quacker pushing up onto that turret.
I was so worried. We're getting flashbacks to some previous times where Quacker has just gone absolutely nuts on this Olaf, trying to find all the big kills in a 1v2. Not able to do it this time, just getting the one, but it's going to be a turret and a bounty for Supernova. Still miles behind in this game as Evil Geniuses do push up in the top side of the map, even as Robbie gets another structure for themselves and brings the gold lead a little bit lower. It doesn't change the fact that there's not enough gold coming through. If Robbie Bob can back away and get the Nashor's Tooth, maybe they'll have the tools necessary to actually go for the fight around the Cloud Soul. But you gotta find that first burst, and the people who are going to be doing that initial damage in Quacker and Music don't have the damage. You see Quacker has completed the Radiant Virtue, which will keep him alive and will help him fight up against Surdy. But you're not going to get to Ryoma and King.
We'll see. I mean, it is going to be hard to step up to the onslaught that Evil Geniuses are bringing through against Supernova right now. Funneled into their fountain is just Quacker that is venturing over to clear up that top wave. But Evil Geniuses almost entirely in full force on this bot side. Surdy still ushering the wave across mid. Robbie Bob has to dash away from the ultimate thrown by Shaden just to create that space, and Supernova want to punish on mid, grabbing the watch from Surdy, who throws down the slicing Maelstrom, almost pulls Sketch down. Breath of Life manages to keep everyone around for a moment's time before Sketch eventually falls, even having expelled the heal there. So Supernova, they get one traded for one, but they lose their inhibitor on the bottom side, and Evil Geniuses consider that a victory in terms of objective take.
Yeah, and it's also the extra bit of gold going over to Sketch does not matter when he is still going to be dead for the upcoming Cloud Dragon Soul. And such a good tool as well for the members of Evil Geniuses, giving Maokai the extra speed, trail the extra speed. 30 opportunities to get into the backline easier and easier is a massive win here when Evil Geniuses do grab that dragon for themselves. There is a couple of gold bounties yet again going in the other direction. Supernova trying to make these things happen, but as you called out, it's still a massive win across the board for the members of Evil Geniuses, even when Serdi ends up going down.
Yeah, and a lot of times when somebody goes down on a team like this where they're ahead, you just think, okay, but what have they drawn? Drawn 3 down. We're still able to finish off Sketch here, and all the while Evil Geniuses were pushing over on that bot side. So Super's already spawning, already reaching up towards the base after they clear through that bot wave. And then all the while, Smoothie and Shaden have been doing a good job of sticking with one another. But it's not enough when it's only 2 of them together. Smoothie flashed away, used the Magnet Storm, but Serdi coming over from the top side. RobbieBot flashing into the pit, and Ryoma seeing if he can find an angle with the rest of them. Music doesn't have anything available to be able to create enough space between Serdi, Ryoma, and himself. So 4 taken down by Supernova. And now Evil Geniuses, they are making that march, Joshi.
They're going right down the middle, and there's no way for RobbieBot to defend this all on his own, right? There is so much damage to these structures. Evil Geniuses are so far ahead. And what a definitive statement coming out from them in this one. Very few mistakes coming across the board, and now they're even trying to find the last player.
Yeah, last player, last moments of the game for Evil Geniuses. Clinic work from start to finish, and a resounding win for them to kick off the week.
I love this coming through from Ryoma as well. 8-0-0. Ryoma does not share food with anybody else on the team, making sure that they can find another win for Evil Geniuses. They go up 1-0 in the series, and if they can start putting some distance between themselves, Supernova and Team Fish Taco, we will start seeing exactly where they can go up. King said, we will make a deep run in the playoffs as long as we stop losing our minds.
Yeah, again, these are the teams that are neck and neck in the standings. So one of them's going to have to step up if they want to make it into that playoff territory, and we will find out who it will be in the coming weeks. But for now, that was just game number 1 of our series. We do have one more game to go before we kick it to a break. A reminder to everyone watching that the LCS Challengers League is brought to you by Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace, where you can book any car you want for just about any occasion. Forget about boring rentals at Turo.com. For now, though, enjoy the break. We got more action coming to you on the other side.